Time, the illegal migrant arrested for setting a woman on fire, then watching her burn to death on a New York City subway, was previously deported. An ICE spokesperson telling Fox News the suspect is, quote, an unlawfully present Guatemalan citizen who entered the United States without admission by an immigration official. Enforcement and removal operations removed him from the U.S. to Guatemala, June 7th, 2018. Jonathan Fahey is a former DHS Deputy Assistant Secretary, the former Director of ICE, and a former federal prosecutor. He joins me now. Jonathan, great to see you. Sorry under these horrific circumstances. And I want to add one more thing to this. Guardian Angels founder Curtis Lewa thinks the Daniel Penny case was the reason bystanders on that train did not help. We're going to read the quote right now. If we could scroll up a little, guys. There we go. Quote, there's no doubt that people don't want to get involved. It's the Daniel Penny factor. It's frozen people. They're saying to themselves, I don't want to get jammed up like Penny. So, Jonathan, doesn't it seem like we have the worst of both worlds here? An entirely preventable crime because the suspect should not have been in the country in the first place. And now a city where people are too scared to be good Samaritans because they don't want to have happen to them what happened to Daniel Penny.
I think you're exactly right. You have bad policies coming together and collide to make the lives worse for the citizens of New York, particularly that victim. But I think it is really interesting that he says the Penny effect. It reminds me of, what people were calling the Ferguson effect several years ago, where police just basically aren't going to want to do their jobs if they're always going to be accused of misconduct and wrongfully in many and often most cases. And it is so sad when you see that because, one, no one tried to help her when she was burning. I saw that article in the New York Post, I think, yesterday. But also, maybe it could have been prevented, and no one's going to want to stand in the way because even though Daniel Penny was acquitted, he still had to go through the rigmarole of a trial, the expense, the stress of not knowing if he's going to prison. So it really is just absolutely horrific. And then you go back to the fact that this was preventable. I mean, we know the Biden administration, after this person was deported during the Trump administration, they didn't do anything to prevent people from coming in. In fact, they encouraged people to come in by, providing them benefits, by telling them once they're here, they'll never get deported absent the most extraordinary circumstance. So, yeah, all of these bad policies collide to lead to one of the most horrific deaths I've ever seen. Plus, it makes the lives of everybody in New York and everyone in the country worse off because we know sanctuary cities, which is another one I think we're getting to, but those aren't just limited to the people in those cities. Like we know with Lincoln Riley, New York sanctuary cities policy led to her death. So all of these bad policies harm everyone, not just the victims, which makes them even more and more disgraceful than, just limited to a precise incident.
We don't just lose our humanity by happenstance. It is furthered along with policies, like you mentioned, like sanctuary city policies and this soft on crime DA that we've seen throughout the last 10, 15 years, I'd argue. We mentioned sanctuary cities, conservative watchdog America First Legal putting sanctuary cities on notice by sending advisory letters to 249 officials across our country. The letter reads, quote, we have identified your jurisdiction as a sanctuary jurisdiction that is violating federal laws. Such lawlessness subjects you and your subordinates to significant risk of criminal and civil liability. Jonathan, what criminal and civil liability, as a lawyer, as somebody who's prosecuted people, could these jurisdictions and the officials in them face?
The criminal liability, there's a harboring statute. It's Title 8. Section 324, which basically, if you do anything to shield, conceal, harbor an illegal alien, somebody you know is an illegal alien or have reason to know is an illegal alien in this country, you could be guilty of harboring, which is a federal felony with a maximum penalty of 10 years. So you have that statute, and the way the federal government could approach this, these communities that the leaders are directing people beneath them in sheriff's office and stuff to essentially violate, to harbor, to hide illegal aliens, they could be targets of these investigations. And all what the federal government could do in terms of the investigation is they could subpoena all of these people that work in the jails, work in the communities, subpoenas their communications, the records of these jails to find out who's illegal in the jail, when they're getting out, things like that. And what will make it particularly difficult for these communities will be, or these sanctuary cities it will be extremely expensive to fight this, and they don't want to go to federal prison solely to keep illegal alien criminals in the country, which is what they're doing. They try to portray this as, hey, we're trying to keep illegal aliens, people from being deported from schools or hospitals. But what they're doing in actuality is people in jails convicted of crimes or charged with serious crimes, like the one in Massachusetts you just referenced. That was a sanctuary city. They released a sex offender because they wouldn't cooperate with ICE. This is either going to stop or they're going to be criminally liable. They could also be civilly liable for things that these criminals commit once they've been released in violation of these ICE detainers. So I think they're really going to face some hard choices coming up at the beginning of the year. And I think most of them are going to yield, and the ones that don't are going to wish they did.
Finally, President Biden sparing dozens of federal death row inmates, including child murderers like Jorge Torres, who you, Jonathan, prosecuted. Let's go over his bio, if you will. He was given the death penalty after he sexually assaulted and stabbed two girls, one 8-year-old, one 9-year-old, to death in 2005. Then 4 years later, he strangled a 20-year-old naval officer. Is Jose Avila Torres someone who should be given the gift of a commutation this Christmas, Jonathan?
No, absolutely not. And this is so disgraceful to the Biden administration. And I just want to say the names of these victims. Laura Hobbs was 8 years old. Crystal Tobias was 9 years old when they were murdered on Mother's Day, stabbed to death. Laura Hobbs was sexually assaulted, stabbed in both eyes over 30 times in total. Amanda Snell was serving our country, was sexually assaulted and strangled while she slept in her barracks in Fort Myer in Arlington, Virginia. Torres also attacked 3 women in Arlington, raped one of them, strangled her, and left her for dead in the woods. She happened to survive. So, yeah, he shouldn't be given a gift by the Biden administration. And what the Biden administration did, which is really makes this disgraceful in a number of ways. One, he's basically nullifying the death penalty totally, but he didn't want to go through Congress, nor did he want to discuss that he was doing it. This was a Christmas Eve release when he did this. The other thing that makes it really bad is there are 3 people that were spared the death penalty, the most high profile of these cases. And Biden, in his statement about why he's getting rid of or why he's commuting the sentence, he was like he couldn't in good conscience impose the death penalty, meaning the death penalty as a whole is unconscionable. But for some reason, it's not for high-profile cases. And the final point I want to make, I would like to know, and I hope somebody will ask the White House, did they notify any of the victims that they were going to commute the sentence of the killers of their children and their loved ones right on Christmas Eve, or did they just have to find out about it in the news yesterday? The whole thing just stinks. It's such horrible. Cynical politics, the way he did it. It shows lack of compassion for the victim, which we've seen over and over this administration. They put criminals ahead of victims, criminals ahead of cops. It's one of the most disgraceful things, and done in the most embarrassing way. If he wants to do it, he should have put a bill in front of Congress saying, we want to eliminate the federal death penalty. But he didn't do that, didn't have the courage, if these are even his convictions or whoever
that
controls
is a question
him. But
as well.
They should have done it legitimately.
Jonathan Fahey, it's weird to say Merry Christmas after that, but we thank you for joining us this morning on this really, really tough story. 3 of them, in fact.